What's up YouTube, that Matt Money here. Today we're talking about Nio, Nikola, or Tesla stock. Which one would I buy with $1,000? So we're going to have $1,000 and we're going to break it into which one I'd place that money into. There are going to be 4 simple criteria on this one, guys. So business model. Do I like the business model? Earnings. Do I see potential for rise in earnings? Growth. Will the company have large growth over their time span? And value. Do I see value in the company going into the future here? So obviously I'm going to keep it very, very simple on these companies. If you guys want a breakdown of one of these companies in particular, leave it in the comments. So let's get into it. Like and sub if you enjoy the content. Let's go. All right, guys, so Nikola Motors. So let's see what we have cooking here. So the business model is the first thing we're going to go ahead and hit up. So they have 3 streams of revenue that they have potentially. They don't have a lot of revenue right now, but potentially. So they have motor, which is going to be like their transport, their big rigs, their trucks and everything like that. Energy, they want to be able to have plants and everything like that, and then have an infrastructure for all their vehicles, and then power sports. So that would be like ATVs and stuff like that. So what is going to be their large revenue source in their business model? And it's probably going to be, as of soonish, the Nikola Badger. So that is going to be what's going to be producing a large amount of their revenue. And we're just going to check out the specs here real quick on that.
So the Nikola Badger can go 0 to 60 in 2.9. It's got 906 horsepower, which is a ton. Its looks are actually really cool, in my personal opinion. I think it looks very futuristic and cool, and it just looks like a nice truck. So looking at that, battery is 300 miles of range, and it can actually tow like 8,000 pounds. So it's got a very impressive spec sheet.
All right, so the Nikola Badger, I think, is actually pretty stinking sweet. And with a stat sheet like that, it's almost got supercar stats, which is sweet. 0 to 60 is really awesome. Horsepower is crazy on it, so I think it is pretty sweet. So the model, but the truck at baseline is going to cost anywhere from 60 to 90K. So the big question with that now is, can your average Joe be able to afford one of these trucks, and how much does a person have generally to spend on these trucks? So I would say like 40 to 50 is pretty high end of your average consumer. So it seems like it's pretty out of the average end of the consumer's buying range. So for me, I pretty much need them to drop off a whole 0 so that I can afford that thing. So I'm not seeing me driving one in the future anytime soon. So let's move on to earnings here. So I found an earnings estimate that in 2021, they're supposed to be making about $150 million that year in earnings. So that's, you know, a start. It's at least something. They don't really have anything in 2020. The only revenue they have in 2020 right now is the pre-order revenue from the Badger that they have right now. So that's the revenue they're going to show for this year. So in 2024, the same guy said they're expected to go up to $3.2 billion in revenue, which is like a astronomical jump. To put it specifically, it's a 21.3x of the revenue in 3 years. Now, is this attainable? I mean, if it really snowballed, it could be, and the potential for that large amount of growth is really nice, but it's kind of scary right now. So the valuation of this company, what's the value? So as of time of recording, it was about $24 billion. And really, guys, I just don't really see it right now. I want them to do a little bit more, produce some vehicles, actually get some revenue coming in, and then I'll see it a little bit more. But for it to be valued almost the same as Ford still, it just seems kind of crazy in my eyes. So that's kind of how we broke down the first one, and now we'll be moving on to the next one. So what is Nio STOCK, guys? So Nio STOCK is similar to Tesla. They make EVs, and they're the Tesla of China is what they've been called. So they make EVs, and they're in China. And a lot of the EVs they make are SUVs. They're made for larger capacity, like 5, passengers at least, if not like 7 passengers. So they make larger SUV EV vehicles, which is cool. Let's talk about the earnings and the growth. So the EPS on this one, guys, is minus $1.46, and that is the earnings per share. So we're knowing that they're having a huge cash burn right now. So mega big cash burn. They've been having it for a long time. They're just bleeding cash right now. And let's go ahead and check out the revenue here. We got a graph to show you, so let's go ahead and look at that.
Here's our revenues here, and you can see from 2017 to 2019, they've almost 2x'd from $12 billion in revenue all the way to $24 billion. So the revenues are growing like crazy.
So from that simple graph, we've seen that they've almost 2x their revenue, which is pretty stinking good. So they could be getting into positive territory after a while, once they actually get into positive territory here. So the next thing we're going to look at here is the SUV and the price that it is. So let's look at that now.
I'll take a peek at Nio's flagship vehicle, which is that SUV that we were talking about before. So the metrics are a little bit different for this one, so you'll just have to bear with me on that. But the range is up to 588 kilometers. It goes 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.9 seconds, which I'm assuming is quite impressive, and it starts at 478,000. So we're going to have to do some math to convert that. So I found a Chinese calculator to go ahead and turn that into US dollars, and it turned out to be about $67,000 for that flagship vehicle there, which is going to kind of play into our analysis.
All right. So with that, is it affordable for an average Joe? And again, I would say no bueno. No affordability for average Joes, which is kind of hard. I want a vehicle maker that an average Joe can buy. I don't want it just to be for that upper crusty area because there's not a lot of people in the upper crusty area. So average Joe could not afford it. The valuation of it's $8 billion, which is way more appealing than Nikola stock in my eyes, only due to the fact that they've actually made sales and the revenues are growing and they seem to be heading in the right direction. So these are kind of just simple thoughts on Nio stock here, and let's hop into Tesla. Okay, so let's hit up the holy grail Tesla here. So everybody knows the business model of Tesla. They sell electric vehicles. They have the infrastructure for all of their vehicles. You can plug in your vehicle at home. They're making cars. They're making soon-to-be trucks, they're making the SUVs, so they're just dipping their toes into everything. And what's my favorite part about this business model is that the average Joe can afford an electric vehicle, unlike the other two. So starting out Model 3 is about $38K, I believe, and that's affordable for your average Joe. An average Joe could go out, get a loan, get this vehicle. There's incentives to buy these vehicles from states, certain states, and you can get money back. So it could be even cheaper than that, which is really, really nice. And then you have the gas savings, so I could see people actually going out and wanting to purchase these vehicles. So I see much, much, much higher demand for something that's $38,000 than something that's like double that if it's sitting in the 70s or if it's sitting in the 80s or whatever. So I see a much higher demand. Now, when we're talking about the business model and we talk about the value of $180 billion, this stock has recently shot up from $200 to almost $1,000. So it's like 5x already. So that's what's tough is all of this good news and all the growth already priced in, and it's really hard to gauge that. But I feel like there still is more growth based on the earnings here. So earnings has been, rising quite quickly, and they're almost really, really close to profitability, which is awesome. The Model 3 is doing much better than expected. Most people are wanting to buy the Model 3. And the Tesla Dorito-looking truck, I think, is also going to do quite well. I don't know if they're going to change the way it looks, or I don't know if they're going to be doing anything with that, but people are either loving or hating the Tesla Model 3 or the Tesla truck. And I think it's going to be at a pretty good price, which is affordable for your average Joe. And the truck market is such a huge one to be tapped into. So I could only see the revenues going up, which I think would be great. So Tesla, it's pretty straight up. The starter of EVs, they're so far ahead of everybody else. They have a home run potential chance with like self-driving vehicles and self-driving taxis. So they just have a lot more growth they could have, but it's hard to know if that $180 billion is already baked into all that potential growth. So let's go ahead and break the three down now. So if I had $1,000 here, fellas, what would we want to do with that? So $1,000, how would I spend it on the three companies we just talked very briefly about? So I would want to put $850 of that $1,000 into Tesla. Why would I want to do that? The main reason for me and what I was looking up is because your average Joe can afford these vehicles, and I think that's the biggest untapped area of the market that these other companies aren't really looking at all. I think your average Joe being able to afford these vehicles and still make money on them is a huge potential revenue booster. I think the Tesla truck is going to do awesome, even though it looks like a Dorito. Not Dorito. I think it looks like a Dorito, but I think it will do good. It has like supercar specs. The triple engine is like crazy fast. And I think people could really get behind it. It looks very futuristic. People either love it or hate it. You can leave in the comments if you like it or hate it. I'm kind of curious, actually. They're established, guys. They've been working on this for a long time. They're established. They have the auto drive mode that they could have in place as well for the home run potential if that ever starts panning out. They have their infrastructure laid out. I really like that. And this one to me is not really a speculative stock anymore. They're heading the way where they're not a spec play. They're going to do well. It just seems like they will do well now. They're in there. It's more popular. In my city even, I've seen a lot more Teslas floating around, and it just feels like they're going to be the electric vehicle maker of the future. They are cutting edge, guys. So that is why I would place most of my money into this stock, and I wouldn't want to put a lot of money in a speculative stock, which I would kind of place Nikola and Nio in the speculative realms right now. So that's why so much less of my 1,000 theoretical dollars are going into Nikola and Nio versus Tesla. So Nikola, why would I only put $100 in Nikola? And why am I putting double in Nikola than I am in Nio? So Nikola, based on what other analysts were saying, has the potential to 21x their earnings in a couple years. And that would be huge. So I wouldn't want to miss the boat on those huge potential earnings. I do think it's overvalued right now, but if in 3 years they're even coming close to that kind of earnings, I think obviously the share price would rise quite a bit from even where it is now. So I think that would be great. They have a huge opportunity of game changer with the hydrogen. If they could somehow get that laid out, I could see the stock price exploding, and they were actually able to change the whole industry. That's a home run and a half right there, guys. That's huge. The problem with that is the infrastructure is probably going to be really difficult to lay out, and I honestly have no clue how they'd go about doing that. So the infrastructure would be hard. I love the Badger. I think the Badger is a really cool vehicle. I just think the affordability is really tough. I'm not sure who's in the market for a Badger when it's going to cost you, half of what my house is worth, That just seems like kind of a tough cookie to crack right now because it is pretty spendy, and if you want to get the best version, it's going to cost you almost 6 figures, which is a lot of money. And no revenues, guys. So I'm not going to throw the boat on this one because they don't have revenue yet. I need more proof that they're going to do well, and I need more proof they're not going to fold, and I just need some revenue. I need some vehicles coming out. I need more from them, guys, before I put any more in. So that is why Nikola, it's a spec play. It's not something I'd throw the house on, obviously, and that's why only $100 are going to Nikola. So now Nio, why am I only putting $50 in Nio? They have revenue, so why are you only doing that? Well, for me, they're just the piggyback of Tesla. Tesla came out, they're game changing, they're doing everything, and why would I want to put any money into a copycat Tesla? Why not just put it into Tesla? It's kind of how I feel about it. I get if people think the valuation's way lower and they could make more money, and I get that, but I'm like, if you're trying to be the next Tesla, just go with Tesla. So that's kind of why I'd only put in $50 in this one. So the growth also is not as high as Nikola, so that's why I'm doing a little bit less. So I don't think they could 21x in like 3 years like Nikola could. I also don't really see game-changing home run hit potential out of this company either. I just don't see it with Nio. I think that they are going to have a large amount of cash burn, and that's scary. Hopefully they get to profitability before that, but they have a large amount of cash burn. Also, same problem with Nikola, their vehicles are really expensive, so I don't know who's going to be buying it. I don't know what the average income is in China, but I would think a lot of people would just not be able to afford their vehicles that they have available. So that's why Nio would only get $50 from me. This is also a speculative play, but they actually have revenues and they have other things going on for them. So I'd say less speculative than Nikola would be. So that's kind of how I feel about all these three companies. If you guys like the content, please like and sub. And if you want anything in particular, please just let me know in the comments. So you guys take care. Bye-bye.